If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of 3. Join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth and postnatal recovery, helping you have a wonderful pregnancy and afterbirth experience. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Well, hi there and welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast. I am your host, Kath Bequee. I'm a mum of 3 young girls, a physiotherapist for women with 15 years experience, and I have an online community, Fitness Mama, which helps to provide pregnant and new mothers with the exercises, support and resources they need to be able to move them from the overwhelm, the physical aches and pains of pregnancy, the weakness felt after birth, and instead, we replace that with the comfort and the confidence they need to get their bodies and minds strong again so that they can get back to doing what they love with a bubba by their side, whether or not that's running around with the kids at the park or running the next marathon. Today's episode is amazing. We dig deep into a few issues which I think are common with pregnant women and new mums. But having said that, I think these challenges are universal for all women and men. So today we dive into body confidence and the changing body during pregnancy and postpartum. We discuss feelings of guilt during motherhood and feelings that you need to do more, or need to be more, or you need to do things differently. The challenges that women who are pregnant or postnatal, or even mums years down the track, come across with mindset and dealing with the inner critic. And these are all the things we talk about in this session today with Kiara Johnson, who is a mindset coach. Kiara helps women remove the negative thoughts that hold them back and build loving relationships with themselves and their bodies and achieve the life that they know they are meant to live. But before we jump into this episode, I want to let you know about the Fitness Mama free online class. In my 45-minute jam-packed class, you'll learn about my 5-step framework for a healthy pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery, helping to reduce the overwhelm and feel confident and get back to doing what you love sooner. Plus, you'll learn the 4 biggest mistakes pregnant and new mamas make when it comes to regaining their strength and how to avoid these mistakes. We also discuss why the old saying, your body will know what to do, is terrible advice, and we dive into the simple strategies to focus on instead to help you recover from birth sooner. To sign up for this free online class, head to fitnessmama.com/free, and the link is in the show notes. Right, let's get into today's session. Kiara, thank you for joining me today. It's so lovely to have you on the show.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me, Kat.
Amazing. So to just get started, could you please introduce yourself to everyone who doesn't know who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, my name's Kiara and I'm a mindset coach. So what I do is I help women regain their self-confidence by releasing their negative emotions and negative thoughts which have been holding them back.
Amazing. And do you do that all via face-to-face consults, or do you have an online program, or how do you see women?
So I mostly see women via Zoom. I do my consultations via there, but I also was working in a Pilates studio as well, having a consultation room there. So that was located in South Melbourne. So I was doing a few face-to-face there as well as having online clients as well.
So I think we got chatting on Instagram and we've been talking a little bit about body confidence during pregnancy and postpartum, that we know that there's so many changes happening in the body during pregnancy and once you've had a baby. And I know personally it can feel like your body is just almost feels a bit foreign, like you've had your body your whole life and then suddenly you go through childbirth and it's doing, it's weird and it's amazing and it's wonderful, but it's also feels like, I just remember having, it was years ago now, but just thinking, wow, is this actually my body? So I do know that from my members inside the membership that body confidence is a big challenge for women during pregnancy, but perhaps more so postpartum. So it'll be amazing to talk to you about all these things today.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right when you talk about it being a challenge because it's so new. And the main issue is that identity shift that is created because you've been in your body for however long you've been since before you got pregnant, whether it's 20 years, 25, 30, 35, you've, had a very similar body. And then all of a sudden, all these changes start occurring. And a lot of what I help my clients with is more from the mindset shift around their body changing and just creating that acceptance and that self-compassion.
So could you talk us through what you think perhaps are the biggest issues that women face with their mindset when it comes to their body and body confidence?
Yeah, absolutely. So just slightly off body confidence, but that will then directly come into it is the main thought and emotion that my clients struggle with is that guilt. Not sure if you can relate to this at all.
Absolutely.
But it's the guilt around exercising as well and eating. And then, of course, that then translates into that body confidence. So, every decision is coming from that guilt perspective. When you're exercising and, your choice. So when you've got your baby there and, you want to go to the gym, but then you're also very tired and then you've got to work around sleep schedules and that sort of thing. So it's just working through those emotions of, feeling that guilt.
You feel that there's so many different things you should be doing, I guess, as a mum. You've got to do your exercise and you've got to, you get pulled in so many different directions. So I think you're absolutely right. There's areas of guilt in all facets of life. When you're exercising, you feel guilty that perhaps you're not spending time with your children, or anytime you're taking some time out, if you leave the house, it was just on the weekend, I tried to leave the house for a walk and my 3-year-old had an absolute meltdown when I left the house. So there's always an element of guilt, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I was saying that's how it then leads in to that body confidence as well, because you've got that decision of, I could go to the gym now, but also I could be spending time with my children, and it's tossing up, what do I do? What's right for me? And like I said, a lot of those decisions are coming from that guilt. And so it's about really taking a step back and just asking yourself, what is the best for me to do at this point in time? And what's the best decision that I can make with the information that I have available at the time?
So do you sit down with the clients and really try to brainstorm what you've just said there?
Yeah. So basically with my background, I've studied NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which is a very fancy term, but it basically translates to brain communication. So I understand when clients are talking through their language and their thoughts, I can actually identify what their limiting beliefs are and what's really holding them back. So we'll often find that there's quite a surface problem, but then as soon as I like to say, peeling their onion layers back. So peeling back the layers of their thoughts and truly getting down to what the root cause is.
So could you step me through the process of what you do with someone when they come to see you, or some questions that you might ask them? Or
Sure thing. And this is often the most challenging question that I get at the start, is asking them, what is it that you want? And I don't know about you, Kath, but it's often really hard, especially as females, to actually answer that question, about what we truly want, because so much comes up. It's like, I want this, but everything that they say, there'll be a but to it. So it's just like we're getting, pulled in all these different directions, and no one ever really has sat down and asked, like, what is it that you truly want? And it might be a client will say to me, okay, well, I want to lose weight. And then it's about sort of getting down to that a little bit more and really figuring out, okay, well, why do you want to lose weight? Like, how do you want to feel? what is it that you see when you're losing weight? So yeah, that question is, what do you want? Often leads to about a half an hour conversation. And as I said, it'll bring up so much mindset issues and the thoughts that are holding them back. And one of the biggest thoughts that I find that comes deep down is, I'm not good enough. That's what stems from our behavior, is that truly deep down is, I'm not good enough to be doing this, or don't feel like I'm good enough as a mum. I'm not good enough as a partner. I'm not good enough as, and the list goes on.
Yeah, wow. That's powerful if that's what you can identify after that one little question.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why with mindset coaching, and I don't know if I told you this before, Kath, but I actually worked as a personal trainer for about 12 years. And so most of my clients that I saw were females wanting to lose weight. I always saw the same issues coming up. Is it wasn't the exercise and it wasn't the nutrition that was the problem, because they already knew what they kind of, and I'll use quotation marks here, but should be doing. I say that very loosely. It was the internal stress around putting so much pressure on themselves. Like, I should have already lost weight by now, or, it's like we're constantly shooting ourselves to be doing things. And that creates that internal stress and that internal pressure. And then a lot of our behavior stems from that.
Yeah, interesting. And the other thing about when someone says something like they want to lose weight, that's such a big goal, and it's such an open-ended goal too. So I really like to sit down with someone and really nut out step by step what that actually means. So they're sort of bite-sized goals, because I want to lose weight it's very abstract, isn't it? And what that means for one person means totally something different for others. And that's not even taking into consideration just everything you've said about the whole mindset issue as well.
Yeah, certainly. And we like to set very vague goals often, and that's sort of that perfectionist kind of fixed mindset, because if we set a vague goal, then we can sort of be in confusion and say, oh, I don't know what I should be doing with exercise, or I don't know what I should be doing with nutrition, because we don't have anything really specific to be focusing on. And that's what I help my clients with as well, is just getting really specific on the goal and figuring out exactly what it is they want.
That's interesting. And then I'm thinking, if you've got a newborn and you've got a mum, like, to be able to go so deep into all those levels of, I guess, struggles with your mindset and challenges, that makes me feel stressed just thinking of all that when you already have so much on your plate. Does that make sense? Do you find that people need to be in a certain frame of mind before they're ready to come and see you?
Look, I'll always do an initial consultation with them, a free consultation, just to double check that we are the right fit to be working together, and also that they are ready, because it is something that you need to be ready for. You do need to be ready to let go of the excuses. We often do want to hold on to them because they provide us with some form of protection at some point in time. And so I can tell that within sort of 10, 15 minutes if someone is actually ready to let go of those things. And I know what you mean by stressful, absolutely, is thinking that, oh God, there's all so much. But what I really then focus on is creating that self-compassion. And we're focusing on letting go of the guilt and letting go of that overwhelmed and those anxious feelings that are, again, sending us crazy essentially during the day, of thinking of all the things that we have to do, and we have to get the house clean, we have to get dinner ready, we have to get the kids ready, we have to have ourselves looking ready. And it's just so much. And by setting the expectations, we're sort of setting those expectations way too high, because that's what we've been used to prior to children, right? Is you've always got those expectations on yourself.
Absolutely. It's so interesting. I feel like you're talking right to me. I need to book an appointment. Can you tell me a little bit about your past story? Like, you're a personal trainer. What made you then dive into this NLP and all this mindset side of things?
I guess going back a little bit before when I was saying I was seeing the same things over and over again with clients. And a lot of it was stemming from, I just don't feel confident in my body. And that's not even with pregnancy as well. That's like outside of that as well. So it's kind of at any time. And it could even have been, 3 years postpartum, for example, as well. I started to realize it's like there has to be another way to help clients. I can give them this exercise session for 45 minutes, maybe once, twice a week. Then they can come to some group training sessions. But I'm not there when they're going through that stressful situation. And, you've got 3 kids at you and you need to be focused on, okay, what can I do in this situation and what behavior is that leading to? And so that was a big part of how I realized I just need to help people in a different way. And then I also worked on cruise ships actually for a number of years, which was really fun. I'm glad I did that a while ago and not now, because I don't think that will exist in a while.
No, that's right. No more cruise ships.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but.
And just seeing hundreds of people every single week. I was on 7-day cruising around the Caribbean. So like thousands of passengers were coming on every 7 days. And so I saw people from all over the world coming in for consultations. And believe it or not, people wanted to come in for a consultation on a cruise ship.
Finally had time to sit down and talk.
And that was it. And you wouldn't think like, oh, you're on a cruise ship, now's the time to be seeing a personal trainer. But you were so right there, that's when they had the time to be able to do this. And that's what really sparked the mindset, is because I just sat there and I just listened to people and, as I said, heard all the same patterns over and over again, and those sort of similar stories about creating that internal stress. And that's when I started to learn more about psychology. And I also did some psychology at university as well. So kind of had a bit of a background, but it was just always within me to be that coaching style. And I realized when I spent more time in sessions talking than I did actually training clients, I realized that I needed to change jobs.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so fast forward a little bit. What would you say now is the most common challenge you come across with either pregnant women or new mums or even years down the track? You mentioned weight loss is one challenge, but what would you say would be the biggest challenge with mindset that you see?
Yeah, one would be the thought of I don't have enough time. I'm sure you could probably relate to this. Yeah.
Yes.
And when we think about that thought, if we go down to another level, is what feeling is that creating? Anxiety, feeling overwhelmed. Now, if we're in that state, if we're feeling in that overwhelmed state, what are our actions?
You write a massive to-do list and you try to move faster.
And then you just get even more stressed because you've got so much. It's like you're trying to juggle all of these balls and they're all up in the air. And at some point they're going to drop. We need to juggle less. And that sounds easier said than done.
So what would be your biggest tips for women who need to juggle less? Because I'm sure there's a lot of them listening today.
One of the first things would be reframing that initial thought. So like I said, the thought was, I don't have enough time. That's creating that overwhelmed feeling. And then the action from there is writing that long to-do list and also probably procrastinating a little bit. I'm not sure if you can relate to that too, that we tend to do the unimportant things when we are feeling overwhelmed and stressed. And so if we kind of look at reframing that thought of I don't have enough time to thinking, well, I have enough time to do the things that I want to do. And you being in control of the time is you get to pick and you get to decide what's important. And you might wake up and it's like, okay, is the housework that important today? Baby might be having a really bad day and you might need to spend that extra time taking care of them. So the housework has to take a back seat. And I think it's looking at you looking good, your children dressed and looking good, and then the house looking good as well. You cannot have all three. Well, you might be able to, but you need to outsource that help, right? So it's like, which one's going to be your priority at that point in time?
I remember hearing about a triangle. So if you think about a triangle and then each point of the triangle, I hope I've got this right. It was a while ago I saw it. But I think at the top is your sanity. And then on one other side of the triangle is tidy house. And then on the other side of the triangle is happy children. And they say, I think you can never have all three at once. You've got to choose two of those. You can never have all three. So I quite like that because that gave me permission to just leave the house. Just have my sanity and happy children.
This episode is brought to you by Baby Bee, Australian-owned and designed prams combining quality, safety and style. Not only does Baby Bee let you try their prams at home with free returns for 9 months. Yes, that's 9 months. They also offer an industry-leading 3-year warranty for total peace of mind. With thousands of 5-star reviews, around-the-clock customer care, and up to $300 of free accessories with every pram, what are you waiting for? Go visit www.babybeeonline.com and check them out for yourself. And yes, for listeners of the podcast, there is a 20% discount code. Enter FITBEE, FITBEE 20 at checkout, and T's and C's apply.
And that's about finding that identity for you as well. It's like, well, how do I want to be as a mum? And you get to choose that. Again, you're in control of that. And there's no housework police coming to knock on your door. And also with preparing meals and preparing dinners and that sort of thing, again, that's directly in your control. And sometimes certain things need to decrease on the priority list. And when you're saying yes to something, what are you saying no to?
Yep, it feels like you've just taken the words out of the mouth of Bridget Murphy, we had on the podcast earlier, and she said that exact same thing. So ladies, if you've listened to both, it obviously means something. So that's amazing. So if you say yes to something, you're then saying no to something. It's easy to forget though, Kiara. That's the problem when you're in the thick of everything and you're busy rushing around or you're trying to be in 3 places at once. It goes out the window and I resort back to my old habits. Do you have any tips around that? This is like an individual therapy session.
So we do have a personality that we just naturally are more dominant in. But then when we're under stress, and that's why I was thought about this when you just asked that question, is that when we're under stress, we will resort to a different personality. And so it's about figuring out how you can take that step back and understand, okay, well, what am I feeling at the moment? Okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm feeling stressed. And then thinking back, okay, what thought is creating this feeling? So once you can figure out that thought, it's like, oh, okay, it's almost like I can just release myself from that. And then creating that self-compassion, which absolutely takes work, because you are spot on when you said when we're running around and you've got 3 kids at you and you're trying to prepare meals or do the housework or whatever it might be, it's so easy for that to just go out the window. And so it constantly takes practice. And self-compassion is about noticing essentially suffering, whether that's yourself or somebody else. And when you're compassionate with yourself, it's about noticing that suffering and not ignoring it. So it's saying to yourself, this is a difficult time for me right now. And, not allowing that criticism to come in of thinking that, again, you should be doing something else.
Yeah, I like that. So to just simplify what you've just said, when you're feeling stressed and whatever the situation is, maybe your newborn baby's crying and then you've got a toddler wanting something at the same time, you need to try to take a step back and think, what is making me stressed at the moment? And if you can identify what it is exactly, then you can, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but then you can choose to prioritize and say yes to something and say no to something.
Yeah, so it's like what thought is creating that feeling? So whether that feeling is stress, anxiety, overwhelm, whatever it might be, it's like what thought is creating that feeling? Because we have essentially created that for ourselves. And that's hard to hear sometimes, but we are doing it to ourselves. So we need to take a step back and actually recognize that. And when you said about a quick tip as well, I just thought of something. It's about what would you tell your best friend to do? If they were struggling with all those priorities and someone's demanding their attention, what would you tell your best friend to do?
It's always easier to give other people tips than to help yourself.
That's why I can always help other people out. Yeah, whether I do that to myself.
So how are you going, Kiara?
It's a very different story. Well, actually, Kath, I went shopping for the first time, as you know, with COVID. I've worn pretty much tracksuit pants for 7 months. And I went shopping a couple of days ago and I was like, oh my goodness, my skin is so white. I haven't seen sunshine in how long? And I'm like, oh gosh, and I've put on weight and everything looks gross. And then you catch yourself, take a step back, take a breath and creating that compassion. Okay, I'm noticing that I'm having this thought and it's about not having that criticism and not comparing ourselves unfavorably to others. I think that's another key too, is when we get caught up in that comparison of whether it's our bodies or how we're coping with things, particularly as a mother as well. If you see another mother, you know, happy walking down the street with their newborn baby and it's not crying and it's not anything and you see them so blissful and then you're struggling and stressed and you're like, why can't I be like that? And I think, that comparison is another thing that creates that stress for us.
I think Instagram's changed and people are showing more raw and real photos, but traditionally, and probably still to an extent, you only ever post your good photos on Instagram, only ever post when things are going well. And it's the same thing. People wouldn't be leaving the house and walking around with their newborn if it was screaming. Well, maybe it might start screaming mid-walk, but but yeah, you're absolutely right. I love that. Okay, can I talk you through when I put out to my lovely audience on Instagram that we were talking today, I had a lovely lady get in touch with me. Can I put to you some of her issues and concerns at the moment? Perhaps just talk through the process that she could go through, because I think what she mentioned to me would resonate with a lot of people, not necessarily the same situation, but just applying your own situation. So this lady's pregnant and has been vomiting and feeling really unwell for the duration of the pregnancy. And then she's off food, she's feeling nauseous. She's a chef, so a lot of identity is carried in cooking and making food for herself and other people. But now she can't stand the sight of food because she's vomiting the whole time. And so that's, I guess, your identity has changed, mixed in with the feeling of guilt because she feels so shocking at the moment because she's vomiting the whole time, but she had trouble conceiving, and so she's really grateful to have conceived. So she's feeling guilty that she's feeling the way she's feeling. So although people might have different situations, I think what she identified there is the feelings of guilt alongside a change of identity. I think that's really common for a lot of women. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, certainly. And with identity, I speak a lot about this with clients as well, because how we identify ourselves is so crucial, again, for our behavior and our actions and everything. Like if you identify yourself as a perfectionist, then you will always act in accordance with that. Or if you identify yourself as just a mum, and I say that because I hear women saying that all the time, it's like, no, you are not just a mum. But then again, it really sinks in, and that's just who we believe that we are. And so we're so much more than our job. So for the client that was saying that she's a chef and that's part of her identity, is that's only part of it. What else is part of your identity? So when you're not doing the thing that you associate yourself with, who are you? Pretty big, I know. But it's about really discovering like who you are when you're moving away from who you thought you were.
Yep, and I think every single woman who goes on maternity leave, whether or not, it's a few months or a few years or whatever it is, every single person goes through that because they're no longer working 9 till 5 or whatever it is they were doing, and suddenly their whole role has changed. That's a really hard question to answer, Kiara. Any tips on answering that question?
Like what you said, for example, with females that are used to working 9 to 5 and then all of a sudden they're not, there can then also be that guilt that they're not working, right? So we're always feeling that guilt at some level. And when you said before about the lady that is feeling guilty because she didn't get pregnant easily and then now she is pregnant, but then now she's feeling sick so that she's feeling guilty. And it's like we're shaming ourselves for feeling the way that we're feeling. So let's take that pressure off, and however you're feeling, it's okay. It's okay to feel your feelings. And the more we try and brush that down and create guilt around, oh gosh, I shouldn't be feeling like this. Why am I feeling like this? I should be grateful. Of course, on some level you are grateful, but you're not grateful that you're feeling sick all the time. That must be awful to be feeling like that. But you could imagine that the more guilt you put on feeling that way, the more it's just going to get compounded and the more internal stress you will create. And it's okay that I'm feeling guilty or stressed or overwhelmed. And then it's taking the next best step to what you need to do to help yourself. And sometimes it's not always about putting this, what I call positivity band-aid on everything. Clients sometimes come to me saying, oh, I just want to be a bit more positive. I need to work out how I can be more positive. There are situations where you just, like I can imagine, feeling sick all of the time. That's very hard to remain positive over that. So let's work on taking a step back, feeling our feelings and removing the shame and the guilt for feeling whatever we are feeling. They're your feelings. You're allowed to feel them.
Some great words of wisdom there. I love it. And it's probably something that every single one of us, male and female, could keep coming back to as well and keep getting reminded about and reminding ourselves about.
It certainly takes practice. It's not something that just comes natural. You've got to keep reminding yourself and keep picking up on those thoughts that you're having.
Okay, so going back to the change of identity, and so let's say you've finished your work, your whole role has changed. Is that what you're thinking along the same lines of accepting how you're feeling about the situation?
Yeah, when your identity is changing and then you're having some feelings about that, because remember, there'll always be a thought about how you're feeling. So we need to come back to, okay, well, what's the thought that is creating that feeling? And then about acceptance. It's okay that I'm feeling this way today. It's okay that I'm tired and I don't want to brush my hair or have a shower, whatever it might be. Or it's okay that I miss work. That's another thing that comes up, is feeling guilty about missing work. It's like, oh, I've wanted a baby for so long and I've wanted to be at home, but also, hey, I love my work and I miss it. And that's okay.
But then what if you do miss it and you want to get back to it, but you can't?
And that's about finding a way that you can still be part of something. And I'm not sure what the direct answer is at, because it's going to be so individual, but you will know the answer to that. And it might be that you plan to have 12 months off, for example. And then after 6 months, hey, I would love to go back 1 day a week. And perhaps you need to talk to your partner and you need to organize something, whatever that might be. But that might not be something that you originally planned for, right? Is that you just assume that you would take 12 months off. But things change and you want to go back, and that's okay. You're allowed to do what you want to do. And
it might go the other way too. You know, you planned on taking 6 months and then you might start to get stressed because you don't feel ready to go back. So to give yourself permission to not.
Yeah, and what's going to work for you and what's truly going to make you happy. For some women I know, they just don't want to be at home 7 days a week with their child. And then obviously they feel guilty about that because they do want a day or two break at work because they absolutely love their job. And we've had to work through that as well, as creating that mindset around, giving themselves a break and creating that compassion. So that's also some, mindset work that needs to be done too.
Amazing. Well, thank you. I guess to finish off with, you've given us So much to think about. Well, you've given me so much to think about. But do you have any words of wisdom for pregnant women today who might be going through these changing feelings inside their body and mind?
That will happen. You will have those thoughts, and that's okay. So it's about noticing that, okay, I'm having this thought that, and, whatever it might be from there. And it's like, okay, well, how do I feel about my body? And just kind of seeing what comes up, and what do I love about my body? That's also then, creating that positive element. And then what do I struggle to love about my body? And it's just, rather than bottling that up and trying to push those feelings down, that's when it can almost burst and it comes out in ways that we don't want them to come out. So it's then putting it out on the table essentially, and confiding in someone that is not going to create that judgment, and that you can just talk freely and I guess vent. Or that might then also be using a journal as well to write down all those feelings. It's like, hey, I'm struggling to love my hips today. They've gotten so big, or whatever that might be. And it's okay to say those things, but then it's about having compassion about how we are feeling and noticing. And particularly maybe for the first 12 weeks where you are feeling low of energy and morning sickness, and maybe prior to that you were going to the gym all of the time and you were, exercising 5 days a week and so much energy, then all of a sudden you fall pregnant and your energy just takes a nice dive and you feel tired and you feel sick. There will be times where you're like, oh, this isn't going so well, or I don't like this, and that's okay. You don't have to be positive and be grateful and all the time.
Love it. Well, thank you very much, Kiara. Can you please let anyone listening today who wants to get in contact with you, could you please let everyone know how they can find you?
Yes, so I'm on Instagram at Inside Out Health Wellness, and I also have my podcast, which is Become Your Own Best Friend. So I talk a lot about these things, about working towards, becoming your own best friend, and it certainly is a work in progress, and that's okay too. It's okay to be on a journey. We don't need to get everything perfect straight away. And you can also visit my website, www.insideouthealthwellness.com.au. So I've got all the information there about my different programs.
Amazing. And all those links will be in the show notes too. So thank you so much, Kiara, for coming on today. Really appreciate it. It was amazing.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.